Chapter 3, Part 6. Actions of love lead to feelings of love. In one of his BBC radio talks, World War II, C.S. Lewis expounded on the basic Christian virtues, including those of forgiveness and charity or love. For the British, the world was unavoidably divided into allies and enemies. In that situation, Lewis said, many of his countrymen and women found the Christian doctrine of forgiving and loving all human beings to be not just impossible but repugnant. This sort of talk makes me sick, many said to him, but Lewis went on to argue that despite feelings of indifference and even contempt, you could change your heart over the long haul through your actions. Though natural likings should normally be encouraged, it would be quite wrong to think that the way to become charitable is to sit trying to manufacture affectionate feelings. The rule for all of us is perfectly simple. Do not waste time bothering whether you love your neighbor. Act as if you did. As soon as we do this, we find one of our great secrets. When you are behaving as if you love someone, you will presently come to love him. If you injure someone you dislike, you will find yourself disliking him more. If you do him a good turn, you will find yourself disliking him less. Whenever we do good to another self, just because it is a self made like us by God, and desiring its own happiness as we desire ours, we shall have learned to love it a little more, or at least to dislike it less. The worldly man treats certain people kindly because he likes them. The Christian, trying to treat everyone kindly, finds himself liking more and more people as he goes on, including people he could not even have imagined himself liking at the beginning. Lewis then used an illustration that has great potency, particularly at the time. This same spiritual law works terribly as the opposite direction. The Germans, perhaps, at first ill-treated the Jews because they hated them. Afterwards, they hated them more, much more, because they had ill-treated them. The more cruel you are, the more you will hate. And the more you hate, the more cruel you'll become, and so on in a vicious circle forever. Early in my ministry, I discovered this practical insight in an unexpected way. A pastor is required to befriend a lot of people that he would never otherwise choose to be friends. Doctors and counselors talk sympathetically and personally with people, but that happens within strict confines of the office and the work week. Pastors live with the opposite they shepherd. They visit with them and eat and play with them in restaurants and parks and in their homes, all while talking to them about their life issues and problems. As a young minister, I was immediately struck by how different a life this called me to live. Like everything else up until that time, I had let my likings and affections strictly determine who I spent time with. When I moved to Hopewell, Virginia, and took the church, however, I met plenty of people in the congregation that if I had moved there with some other job, I would have pursued as friends. I would not have pursued as friends. It wasn't that I didn't like them, I just shared no affinities with them. There was no spark of the kind you feel when you want to spend more time with someone. Nevertheless, as a pastor, if anyone needed to talk to me at 3 a.m., I was there. If they went to the hospital, I was there. If a family's son ran away from home, I got in my car and went to find them. I sat in their homes, went to their children's graduations, went to their family picnics. I shared my heart with them as they shared theirs with me. That's what it is to be a pastor, especially in a smaller church in a small town. I was called upon to do all the actions of love with a lot of people to whom I was not emotionally drawn, and it changed me. This came home to Kathy and me one day after we'd been in the church only a couple of years. We had a midweek off, and were deciding how to spend it. I thought of a particular couple in church and proposed that we visit them and have them over. She looked at me astonished and said, "Why on earth?" This particular couple had few or no friends. They had many personal problems that made them unattractive to others, and indeed to each other. Kathy certainly understood the need to see them and spend time with them, but this was our day off, and surely time with the couple was ministry work. For a moment I was surprised by her surprise, and then I laughed when I saw what happened. For months I had been investing much time, thought, and emotion to helping this couple move forward in life. In short, I had been doing various actions of love, listening, serving, sympathizing, confronting, forgiving, affirming, sharing. And after all that, I realized I'd actually come to like them. Why did that happen? Was it because I was so holy and spiritual? No, not in the slightest. It was because I stumbled onto the practical principle that Lewis named. I had been loving them even when I didn't like them, and the result was that slowly but surely my emotions were catching up with my behavior. If you do not give up, but proceed to love the unlovely in a sustained way, they will eventually become lovely to you. Our culture says that feelings of love are the basis for actions of love, and of course that can be true. But it's true to say actions of love can lead consistently to feelings of love. Love between two people must not, in the end, be identified simply with emotion or merely with dutiful action. Married love is symbolic, complex mixture of both. Having said this, it is important to observe that two emotions and actions. It is the latter that we have the most control of. It is the action of love that we can promise to maintain every day. Deciding to love. How important is the principle to marriage itself? It is crucial. In Ephesians 5:28, Paul says husbands ought to love their wives. He had surely urged them to love their wives in verse 25, but here, just to be clear, Paul uses the verb that stresses obligation. There is no doubt about what Paul is saying. He commands husbands, they ought to love their wives. Emotions can be commanded, only actions, and so it is actions that Paul is demanding. He doesn't care how they feel on a given day or at a given moment. They must love their wives. Does that mean it doesn't matter who you marry? That you don't have to be in love with the person you wed, or that emotion is unimportant in marriage? No. I'm not proposing that you deliberately marry a person you don't like, but I can guarantee that whoever you marry, you will fall out of like with them. Powerful feelings of affection and delight will not and cannot be sustained. It is quite typical to lose the head over heels feelings for your mate, even before you get married. Because our emotions are tied to so many things with our physiology, psychology, and environment, your feelings will ebb and flow. And if you follow the culture's definition of love, you may conclude that this can't be a person you should marry. Our culture glorifies romantic passion, and so we say, if this is the person for me to marry, my feelings wouldn't be so up and down. In a chapter called Christian Marriage and Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis writes, people get from books the idea that if you have married the right person or may expect to go on being in love forever. As a result, when they find they are not, they think this proves they have made a mistake and are entitled to change, not realizing that when they have changed, the glamour will presently go out of the new love just as it went out of the old one. My voice is freaking tired. It's like 6 more pages, but I have to go back to this later.